What's up everybody, EJ here, and after a ridiculously long wait, we can finally achieve Toon shading in Redshift. Well, kinda. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can achieve Toon-like NPR shading using the new Matcap node in the latest version of Cinema 4D and Redshift. Now if you want to follow along and download the project files as well as the Matcap Toon pack that I created from scratch, you can find those links in the description below. Alright, let's tune it up in Redshift. Alright, so yes, Redshift finally has the ability to do some NPR or non-photoreal shading using the new Matcap node. And with that, you can actually create some really cool cell shady, Toon shading style effects, but it is kind of still limited. But this is the first taste that Redshift users can finally dive into NPR style looks using, again, the Matcap node. So that's all I'm going to be showing you in this video is the new Matcap node, how to wrangle it to create some really cool stylized Toon looks. So here I got one of the best Ninja Turtles, my favorite Ninja Turtle, Raphael, and he's going to be helping us demonstrate this whole Matcap effect. And if you're unfamiliar with Matcap, let's go ahead and let's dive into the asset browser here. If you just search for Matcap in the asset browser, you can see examples of some Matcap textures. So all they are, again, is basically a render of a lit sphere with all of the shading built into it. You can see some are kind of diffuse, some are kind of reflective, some are super shiny and metallic. And here's one that I made myself, and it's actually very, very easy to make your own Matcap textures. You basically just make a sphere in Cinema 4D, you crop it to a square composition, you light that sphere, you texture it all you want, render out a TIFF, and you can load that up as a Matcap. You can also do it in Photoshop. You basically have a square project, you make a circle, and you shade it up however you want. And I'll show you a little bit about that, how to do that later, but these are the examples of some Matcap shaders here. So how do we get Matcap applied to our Raphael here? Well, I'm going to go and use this kind of like clay material here, and you can download whatever you want, but to get these working and applying them to your object, what you need to do is first I'm going to make sure I am using the Redshift renderer, because of course it's very important to be able to use the Redshift Matcap shader. You need to be using Redshift. You also want to make sure you're on the latest version of Redshift as well. And what we're going to be doing is we are going to go and create a new material, and then we're just going to open this up and open up that node manager. And so what you're going to see contextually, you can see that the actual Matcap node showed up in our asset manager here, but what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop that TIFF file, that's our Matcap texture, into our node manager here. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to grab that Matcap node. So you could go and drag and drop that node from the asset browser, but I'm just going to go and make sure my mouse is hovered over the node editor there, hit C, and just type in Matcap, hit enter, and there's our Matcap node. Now how you set this up is very easy. You just plug in your Matcap texture into the Matcap node. It's going to automatically connect to the color input. And then what you're going to do with this Matcap node is you're going to directly bypass the Redshift material node and plug it right directly into the surface. You can see the output updated, so you actually don't even need the Redshift material node at all. So what we can do at this point is I'm going to go and let's apply this material to our RAF here. And so what you're going to see, let me actually right click and go to apply, copy tag to children there. And you're not going to see anything in our viewport, so let's go and let's open up our Redshift render view. Let's fire that off. And you can see what we got here. And you can see I got a bunch of windows here. Let me actually close out of this menu here, and let me dock the node editor down here, and let me dock the Redshift render view right over here. And so basically what you can see here is this Matcap texture with all the shading built in is now applying that shading and kind of taking the normals map from the sphere and mapping it to the normals of this object here, our RAF here. Now, one thing I want to keep in mind is you can go and we can select this object here, and let me make sure I don't have geometry only on. Let's actually hide some stuff here, viewport, and I can rotate this like so, and you can see that lighting is going to stay basically kind of lit from your camera view. So you can create kind of like cool effects where it almost looks like it's actually being lit in reality, but it's all fake. And to prove it to you that it's fake, I'm going to turn on the dome light. It's not going to do anything. I can add a Redshift sun and sky rig not going to do anything as well. Again, no lighting in your scene is going to affect the Matcap at all. And what we can start doing at this point is, how do we make this look more like a cell shader or more like Toony? So what we can do is we actually can take the Matcap output and feed it through a ramp and basically colorize it. So what I'm going to do is make sure my cursor's hovered over the node editor, hit C, type in ramp, and we got our ramp. And so we're just going to feed the Matcap out color into the alt input, and we're going to output that color from the ramp to that surface. And basically what it did is it just remapped, let me just give this a little bit more room here, just remapped the Matcap texture to black and white. And now you can kind of crunch the levels here if you want, but the real thing we're going to use the ramp for is to basically quantize the shading here. So what does quantize mean? It basically means we're just going to make this more like a stepped kind of ramp without any interpolation, smooth gradients at all. So I can go and make a mid-tone color here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, and it's always hard to do this, I'm going to try to hover over where I get that rectangular selection box there. I don't know why it's so hard to do that, but what I'm going to do is select all of those chips, and I'm going to go down to interpolation and change this to step. And voila, look at that. We got some cell shading here. So at this point, what we can do is just remap these values here and get the specular highlights how we want. We can even change the colors here. So let's get some kind of like greeny, like lime greeny for the highlights. And let's make this look like a Ninja Turtle here. We got some green like that. Love how in the new Turtles movie they just have like all different shades of green, which is really nice. And let's maybe go for something like this for the darker color. And so let's go even darker. And so you can see how we got this really cool kind of cell shadery type of look. Looking pretty good, right? Now, what we can do at this point is we can go and maybe we can change up the Matcap texture and see what that looks like. So we can go back into our asset browser here, and let's see what this remapped ramp looks like on maybe this Matcap. So I can drag and drop that Matcap material in there and plug that into the Matcap, and we can see that everything kind of changed a little bit. And if I go to my ramp, you can see that the values here I'll have to kind of adjust a little bit because all the values of that Matcap are totally different. So you can kind of see what we got going on here. It's kind of like the lights coming from the top down. We got like a high key light or something like that. And you can see what's going on there. So it's kind of like you can experiment with all these different Matcaps here and basically remap them, quantize that shading, use this ramp. And another cool thing is that while it is pretty limited, like you can't really change the lighting, the one thing you can do is select the actual texture node and go into the rotation here. In using the rotation, you can basically rotate this sphere shading and kind of get like, okay, well, we got the highlight, like maybe the light's coming from over here. Maybe we got it like we got some underlighting, so we got a very spooky looking RAF. And so you can see what's going on there. So there is a little bit of some art direction you can do with that lighting. And so let's try this like Spider-Verse Matcap that I made from scratch because Spider-Verse is always hot. And let me go and plug that in there. And you can see now we got a more Spider-Verse-y type of look. So pretty cool how you can kind of just try things out and get the type of shading that you want by plugging in different types of Matcaps in here and putting it through a ramp. Now, another thing you can do is, again, I'm going to try to, get the arrow with the rectangle there. Select all these knots, and instead of step, we can actually go to maybe blend. And so at this point, what you'll see is we now have like a little bit of quantized shading, but we have like a little bit of a fall off there. Maybe something like this. And so, maybe that's cool. Maybe we can select all these again and change this to linear. And this actually looks pretty cool as well. So we got this kind of cool shading. We can adjust these little dots. And you can see that this is kind of looking like that stylized Toon shading that they have like in the Turtles movie, which is kind of cool. So we can quantize that and darken that. And so I'm kind of digging this so far. Maybe move the highlights up a little bit. And so that's looking pretty nice, okay? And what we can do at this point is let's add some outlines. So We don't have any outlines at this point to kind of complete the whole cell shader Toon look, but we can do a little bit of trickery to create some outlines. And how we can do that is, let me close out the asset manager here. We can do this using Fresnel. So let me go, again, hovering my cursor over the node editor, hit C, and I'll type in Fresnel. Let's go and add a Fresnel here. And so if I just solo the Fresnel, you can see that it's just creating that Fresnel effect on your object. But what we want to do is create an outline using Fresnel. So the first thing we need to do is we need to change the facing color and the perpendicular color and swap it. So I'm going to bring this down there and make the white chip here. And so now the facing color will be white, and the perpendicular color, which is the color on the outsides, the edges, will be black. But you're not seeing anything right now, because what we're going to do is we're going to uncheck use index of refraction. And once you do that, boom, look at that. We got a little bit of a hazy outline here. Now, the one cool thing we can do is the lower this number here, the curve fall off, the thicker that, not the thicker, but the more that Fresnel spreads. So what we can do at this point is, just like we used a ramp node to kind of colorize and clamp the Matcap texture, we can do the same thing with the Fresnel and kind of crunch the level. So let's go ahead, hit C, grab a ramp, plug in this Fresnel into the ramp in the alt input, and then so I can solo this now. And what we can do is we can see the result of the Fresnel being put through the ramp. So I can go and clamp this down pretty good like so, and voila, we got pretty nice looking outline. Now, this is a very thick outline, so what we can do is go back to the Fresnel, and remember, the higher this number, the thinner that outline will be. So look at that. We got pretty much some cool outline going on right there. And so at this point, what we need to do is combine our Matcap, and let's delete these two other Matcap textures there. We need to combine the Fresnel outline with the cell shading coming from our Matcap through that ramp. And how we can do that is by bringing up a color layer. So we'll add a color layer, and this allows us, basically, it's like the old layer shader in the old standard render, where you can combine two layers and use it like Photoshop and use all these blending modes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in the ramp into the base color here, base layer, and then I can plug in the Fresnel in the layer 1. So that layer 1 is going to be stacked on top, even though it's kind of backwards in the actual attributes manager here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to uncheck that solo, because hitting that's just going to solo that single node. I'm going to go ahead and plug this out color into the surface, and you'll see that the only thing we're seeing at this point is our Fresnel outline. So what we need to do at this point is, there's layer 1, that's our ramp. We need to use a blending mode to blend it on top of the base color, the base layer, which is our cell shader. So I'm going to go and let's just use multiply, and boom, we got a really cool outline there. We can even go and let's see if we can change the color here. And you can see that we can, it's not solid black, so we can remap that color to have a little bit of a hue to it. And at this point, what we can do is let's go and let's duplicate this whole setup. So we'll name this green. I'll command click and drag and name this red, because we need to make sure that everyone knows this is Raphael. And so what we're going to do is go to the ramp here and then just basically change these colors to red, or red hues, something like that, and a little bit of oranges for the highlight. And so let's apply this to the mask and see what that looks like. So that's looking a little bit too burnt sienna-y, so let's go and brighten that up a bit. Boom, there we go. That's looking a little bit better. That is Raphael right there. So let's go ahead and let's command click and drag. Let's rename this white. Let's select the ramp, and we'll just make this basically kind of grayscale. And let's apply the white to the eyes and the teeths right there. And so you can see what that looks like. And so you can go in, and for the white, you can, maybe you want a little bit more shadow in the eyes. Maybe you even want to go to that texture there and adjust the rotation to get the shadows maybe looking a little bit different. Maybe something like that, and then go back to the ramp. So there's a lot of art directing you can do here. Quote unquote art directing you can do with this Matcap shader here, this whole setup. And let's go ahead and let's duplicate this, make black for the iris, or for the pupil. I always confuse those terms. Let me go and let me just make this dark, and we'll just bring these values over, and let's apply the black to the pupils. And so you can see you can get that like nice specular highlight in there too that looks kind of toony. And again, with that, let's just move these over. With that, we can say, okay, let's move that specular highlight and rotate this. So you can change the specular highlight like so. So again, a little bit of art directability. So what I should have done is there's one last thing we can do, and that is, you know, on the inside of the mouth, there is no shading. There's no shadow inside the mouth. Because remember, this is using Matcap. It's not using real lights and real shadows. So we're kind of faking all this stuff. So what we can do to fake the shadow inside the concave mouth, or any concave bits of your model, we can use ambient occlusion. So ambient occlusion, usually it's applied in, you know, automatically, but you can actually use the ambient occlusion node for some stylized stuff like what I'm going to show here. So hovering over my node editor, hit C, type in AO, there we go, get that AO node, AO, and then we're going to solo that, and you can see what's going on, okay? So nothing great, we're just get like this little gradient there, but the one thing we can do is bring this spread all the way down to 0, and you can see that it's kind of very cell shadery. Look at that. And so what we're going to do with this AO is just add this on top of the original cell shadery Toon ramp and the outline by plugging this out into the layer 2 color. And then all I need to do is make sure I enable that and make sure I'm not soloing that ambient occlusion anymore, and go to the layer color, turn on layer 2, and then just choose multiply for that as well. And now we have that AO multiplied on top of everything underneath it, which is pretty dang cool. So I can go and let's copy this. So controller command C, and I can copy this to say, I don't know if this will actually do anything on the mask here, but I can just apply this like so and multiply. So, you know, that had a little bit of outline there. So that's pretty cool. And let's copy this to white. Really, I should have added ambient occlusion to the initial node for the initial material first, because now now you know how to copy and paste things, I guess. So, and there you go with that. And why not? Let's not leave this one out and plug the layer 2, enable, multiply. Cool. So a little bit of stuff going on there. We got our cell shader by clamping and remapping the Matcap texture, the Matcap node, through a ramp, and creating really cool kind of cell shadery type of looks. So all this is really, really cool. And again, you can just go and you can rotate this around and see how that kind of like, you know, it almost looks like you're shining a light. It's just, you know, fixed to that camera. And so what I want to do at this point, let's actually save this out because I'm liking how this is looking. Save early, save often. RAF, Toon, and cool. And what I'm going to do at this point is I mentioned that you can kind of create your own Matcap textures. Like I said, I got this Spider-Verse. I can't spell Spider-Verse apparently, but Spider-Verse Matcap. So how you can do that is I'm going to go into this other version of Cinema 4D, and my scene is set up pretty basic. So I got my standard render here, and what I can do is I can just make a 2K by 2K square composition. And the key here is you're going to make your sphere that you're going to apply that Matcap shading to a sphere that is just inside the boundary. So you don't want to have a sphere that has gaps between the boundary here. You want to make sure this is right up against the bounds of your view here. And if you want to go and change how dark those boundaries are here, just go to your view settings and go to your safe frames, and you can adjust the opacity there so you can kind of see like, oh, I got a little bit of a gap there. So I'll just increase the sphere just a little bit, just a touch. So you don't want it also outside either. So you want to really just eyeball that And so you apply the shading you want to. You can even use the cell shader from the standard render and create your own type of looks, and then, you know, make it into a Matcap and do it that way. So just for an example, I got my light. It's a infinite light, so I can adjust this, and maybe we go like that. And I'm gonna go to save, and I'll just save it to, and you can see here are all the other Matcap Toon looks that I got here. I got some half tones, which is super, super cool. I'll show you in a second. I got some like watercolory stuff, some very stylized looks that, again, you can go and remap through a ramp node. But I'm going to provide all these as a download. But this is how I made this. So this is just, you know, your gray, diffuse, and you can do a depth of like 16-bit or 32-bit, but the textures that I saw in Maxon's asset browser are all TIFF format, so I just, you know, rolled with that. So we're just going to render that image, and then let's jump back into the other Cinema 4D. And then the cool thing about this is I can just go in, let me just find this on my desktop here. Go in, here's my gray diffuse. I can just drag and drop that there and plug that into, what are we? We're in this the black material. Let's go to green. And I'll just, again, here's the stuff right here. There's that gray diffuse image I just rendered out. And let's plug that into our Matcap. And so you can see that that's a more diffuse kind of look. And maybe that looks kind of cool as well as you plug that into a ramp. Okay, so actually that looks pretty cool. So then if you wanted to use that for all the other ones, you just basically, let's just copy and paste. Zoop. So simple gray diffuse texture. We can go and use that for all of this stuff here. Now, another cool one that I really like, let me show the halftone dots. So this is really fun. I'll drag and drop this into here. And let me actually copy this into the green one. Plug this into Matcap. Boom. And it's a little bit stretched there. But depending on your object, this can look either way better or not so much. So let me go, let's try the halftone lines. So we'll go plug that in there. And that's, you know, that's not too bad. And so remember, you're remapping the normals to your object. So let's apply this kind of purple smudge. See what that looks like. And whenever you add something new, you might need to have to, you know, readjust these ramp stuff here. So here's kind of like a kind of paintery vibe, like so. And so, you know, play around, have fun, experiment. But I think I'm like, it's weird. Just that gray diffuse is really working for me. I'm really digging that gray diffuse on this RAF right here. So hopefully this kind of opens your eyes to what is possible now with the Matcap node. And I got way too many of these things in here. Let me go and delete this. But again, I'm going to provide the download of this project file and those Matcap textures that you can go and experiment with and see what works with your model, because every model is different. But hopefully you know about Matcap, what it can do, how you can achieve kind of Toon shadery looks in Redshift. And, you know, I know we've been, you know, this isn't really full on Toon shading, but hey, it's something. And as Redshift users, we've kind of been, you know, wandering this NPR desert for a while. And hopefully this is like the first few drops of NPR rain, or non-photo real rendering rain, that we're getting. And maybe full on Toon shading is just around the horizon there, that Toon shading oasis off in the distance. All right, so what do you think about Matcap? Is this going to hold you over, or have you already left to like Arnold or Octane or something like that, or you had Toon shading for quite a while? I'd be really interested to hear what you think. Leave those comments in the comments below. And if you have any questions about this, any future tutorials you want to see, also drop those in the comments as well. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Really appreciate every single view. That's right, even you viewing right now. Thank you very, very much. And I'll see you in the next tutorial. And until then, go out and make something.